All right, it's Tito here with the Buckeye Blitz. Thanks so much for tuning in. Fantasy Sports, powered by DSP Media. Go download the app. It's free. Facebook and Android both for Fantasy Sports. Also, fantasysports.com. We got all kinds of great new content being added to the station. Round-the-clock programming. Go check it out again. Fantasy Sports. Download the app. Apple, Android, and Apple both. And you can get all you need as far as sports coverage goes across the country. All right. So following the X, by the way, at That Happens. Missouri debacle from the Cotton Bowls in our rearview mirror, and it's time to start looking towards 2024. And there were people that were concerned about when the transfer portal first opened up in December. The Buckeyes lost Kyle McCord. He is transferring out to play at Syracuse now after flirting with Nebraska. That's a long story. So McCord's gone. We know Chip Trayanum is off to Kentucky. One of the running backs, Mayan Williams, another running back, also he is entering the NFL draft. So all of a sudden, the running back room seemed a little bit bare with just as far as scholarship players go. You had Travion Henderson and Dallin Hayden in there, but we've had some changes here that I want to go through. But there's concern about Ohio State losing players. Like, what's the culture like? 3 straight losses to Michigan. The awful performance against Missouri in the Cotton Bowl. And so some Buckeye fans were concerned about where's the program headed. And I can tell you, if you look at the players that are now coming back, the Buckeyes are in a fantastic situation for 2024. There's a lot of players that Ohio State was expected to lose. Before the season started, it was like, this guy's last year, whatever. And it's actually turned out to be almost the opposite of that. Marvin Harrison Jr., I totally understand why he's going to the NFL. He'll be a top 3 or top 5 pick at worst. Marvin Harrison Jr., who flirted with staying, is gone. Expected it. Should not be surprised by that. However, other players now have been announcing they want to come back because they want to get another shot at Michigan and a shot at the 12-team playoff championship. And so the bigger names, we'll start on the offensive side of the ball. Travion Henderson is coming back. Henderson is, according to Mel Kiper Jr., he is a top 4 running back as far as the ones that are draft eligible. He rushed for 926 yards last year, 11 touchdowns. He had 11 catches for 229. And in his 3 seasons at Ohio State, he's rushed for 2,745 yards, 32 touchdowns. That's damn good numbers there for him. So Travion Henderson is coming back. Also on the offensive side of the ball, Emeka Egbuka, the receiver. A lot of people thought before the season started he could be a first-round pick in 2024. Certainly would not last long into the second round. He has also announced he is returning. On the offensive line, Donovan Jackson is back. So those are 3 big players coming back for Ohio State to try to get another shot at beating Michigan and a shot at a Big Ten championship and playing in the 12-team playoff. So that's on the offensive side of the ball. As far as guys coming back on defense, this is amazing, the list of players that are coming back. It was announced earlier, Lathan Ransom coming back for another season. We also heard Tyleik Williams coming back. Jack Sawyer, who had 3 sacks in that Cotton Bowl win, best game of his career, he's coming back. Ty Hamilton, linebacker Cody Simon, Jordan Hancock coming back, and then 2 big ones. Cornerback Denzel Burke. That's a big one coming back for Ohio State because another year in this system of Jim Knowles, and he's a huge part of this. When you get both Ransom and Burke coming back, those are big things. And also JTT, the defensive end, JT Tuimoloau is coming back. And that's another one that could have been gone that we thought might be leaving. JTT, I was calling that. He played 13 games for Ohio State last year, played in every game, had 38 tackles, 7 tackles for loss, and 5 sacks. So all of a sudden now, and you bring him back with Williams and Sawyer, I mean, this defense is loaded next year with the guys that are coming back that are now getting, in some cases, a 3rd year in Jim Knowles' system, which is significant. Another year with Sonny Styles, too. And, my God, this team is going to be so loaded on defense. Now, on offense, I talked about the fact they lost Kyle McCord. Not a huge loss. I think that he went into Day's office with his dad and wanted to be guaranteed a starting job, and Day would not guarantee it for him. That's why he left, flirted with Syracuse, and then eventually headed off now. Went to Nebraska, visited Nebraska, and they eventually committed to Syracuse. But so the offensive side of the ball, those are the big losses. Look, getting Denzel Burke back is huge for Ohio State this upcoming season. And so on top of that, then, they did make some additions on the offensive side of the ball through the transfer portal. Now, Will Howard is coming in. He's the quarterback from Kansas State, and he is 6'5". He's about 240 pounds, big guy. His numbers last year with Kansas State, those numbers overall aren't that much better. They're probably actually not quite as good as Kyle McCord's numbers, but he's never been able to play with the type of offense that Ohio State's going to produce. He's more mobile than McCord was, more mobile than Stroud was allowed to be. But last 2 seasons, he's gone 12-5 as a starter at Kansas State. They won that Big 12 title game over TCU, remember, back in 2022. And so he's got 1 year of eligibility left. And so he came here for a chance. He considered Florida State. I'm sorry about Florida State, considered Miami. And he also talked to USC. He was looking maybe going to the draft, decides to come to Ohio State to compete for the job. In his 27 games at Kansas State, he's got over 5,700 yards passing, almost 5,800 yards passing. And he's also rushed for 19 touchdowns, thrown for 48. So I love the addition of Howard to this team. And Devin Brown, to his credit, could have entered the transfer portal, decided to stick around, wants to compete for the job, along with Howard and Lincoln Keenholz coming back as a sophomore next year, and then also incoming stud freshman Aaron Nolan. So I expect Howard will get the starting job this year, and then in 2025 you'll have Aaron Nolan in as a starter. I don't think Devin Brown ever gets the job on a full-time basis. So Howard, great addition for Ohio State, added to the quarterback room. He will be better. I think his numbers in there will be better than what Kyle McCord had, even though we know Howard won't have Marvin Harrison Jr. to throw to. He's going to have plenty of studs already. It'll be probably the best receiving room in the country again at Ohio State. The Buckeyes didn't stop there. They also added Quinshon Judkins, a running back out of Ole Miss. Now, he's a true sophomore. He's 5'10", 210 pounds, and he led Mississippi in rushing the last 2 seasons. He also, I believe, led the SEC last year, but he rushed for 1,567 yards and 16 touchdowns in his freshman year. Excuse me. And last year, 1,158 yards and 15 touchdowns. So having him now with Trayvon Henderson and Dallin Hayden, who I expect will stay, that's a great running back room for Ohio State. Also, I know it's not as deep as far as numbers of bodies. Like when last year when you had Train you could rely on, you had Henderson, you had Mayan Williams, Hayden obviously, but Evan Pryor, who now is gone as well. And nonetheless, now what we've got with this running back room, though, it's top heavy a little bit as far as like the Judkins and Henderson are both fantastic 1A and 1B running backs. I think with Howard's his mobility, you'll see Ohio State running the ball more effectively this year and using the receivers or running backs more out of the backfield to catch passes as well. Another huge addition for Ohio State on the offensive line. We know the offensive lines had their struggles. Well documented. They were completely dominated by Missouri in the Cotton Bowl with some of the choices they made as far as scheme and the way they line people up. It's been a struggle the last couple of years, the offensive line. Well, they just added Seth McLaughlin from Alabama, a transfer. He's 6'4", 305 pounds. He started every game at center this past year for Alabama, which is good for Ohio State. They need someone like that. And so he's a huge body that's going to be out there to probably anchor him, and Jackson will anchor the offensive line for the upcoming season. I love this addition. He made this decision before Nick Saban's retirement. So he came to Ohio State, and he's got 1 year left, by the way, of eligibility. But now that Nick Saban has retired, any player in Alabama can choose to transfer in the next 30 days. They enter the portal because if you lose your head coach, you get 30 days of a free time, even though the portal's technically closed. You get free transfer right now if you want it. So there are some people to look at from Alabama. One of them is a 2024 5-star recruit coming up who committed to Alabama, but now is real with his commitment, Ryan Williams. And, Ryan Williams knows, like everybody else that's been a receiver, that Ohio State is wide receiver U with what they've been able to do. So Ryan Williams, I think, will give Ohio State a really good look. He hasn't played yet at the college level. He is an incoming freshman. Also, another one is safety Caleb Downs for Alabama. He is somebody else who the Buckeyes, I'm sure, are going to pursue. Can't ever have too much depth and talent on the defensive side of the ball with Ohio State. So now 2025 class, Devin Sanchez, who according to 24/7 Sports is the number 1 cornerback, CB, in the country, has committed to Ohio State. Blake Woodby, who is another top 10 cornerback, he's also committed to Ohio State. So that's 2 great additions for Ohio State, and Tim Walton's doing a fantastic job of reloading, restocking that defensive back room. Coaching staff changes, we figured there'd be a couple. The one Perry Eliano, who was the safeties head coach, he is now gone. He's been replaced by Matt Gurrieri. He is the new safeties coach. Also, Ohio State has let go of Parker Fleming, who was a special teams coordinator. Look, special teams was a hole again this year. You remember the Missouri game? There was 2 times Ohio State fielded punts they should have let bounce and see if they go into the end zone. We've had that happen a few times. There's been the debacle with a couple of fake or non-fake punts, whatever you want to believe, with Ohio State, where they didn't execute. So he is out. Ohio State's going to add a new offensive coordinator at some point here. And as soon as they do, I would expect Justin Fry, the offensive line coach, will be gone as well. And we'll see how the rest of the coaching staff shakes out. I know they want to get James Laurinaitis, the former Buckeye, a full-time regular coaching position so he can go out on the road and recruit. Right now, because of his position as a grad assistant, he's not allowed to go on the road. He can talk to recruits when they come here, but he can't go out on the road to actively recruit. And I think that Ohio State wants that. And I think Laurinaitis wants that as well. He will be a big he's going to be a good recruiter for Ohio State when he gets the opportunity. All right, now let's look at 2024, because we are embarking in a new era in college football, Big Ten and college football both. With the 12-team playoff, obviously that's a big change. The way that the dissolving Pac-12, that's gone now. Ohio State's adding, the Big Ten is adding 4 Pac-12 teams to the Big Ten: Oregon, USC, UCLA, and Washington. And also banning the division. So starting in 2024, it won't be East-West. It'll be just the top 2 teams at the end of the season in the Big Ten standings. We're not sure what the tiebreaker procedures are yet. We're waiting to hear that. Big Ten keeps saying later. They'll let us know what it's going to be, because I don't think there will be – I think every year we're going to have a tie for that second place and maybe even first place, just because you're not going to see a lot of teams lose. Not many teams are going to defeat it. Most teams are going to lose 1 or 2 games, especially if you look at the schedules coming up. But this is what I'm most excited about with the Big Ten, is how it is going to be tougher schedules now because of the addition of these teams. Having one undefeated team and a single one-loss team atop the standings is very unlikely. I think, like I said, we have ties almost every year. So let's look at some of these schedules here. I'll run through some of these. I think I've talked about this before, but Ohio State, out of all the big-name schools that are competing for the Big Ten championship, they might have the easiest schedule. They host Iowa, who will be good. Iowa's always good. Their defense obviously didn't show up against Michigan, but their defense will be a challenge again next year. So Ohio State hosts Iowa. They host Nebraska, who may have Dylan Raiola, the former Buckeye recruit, in under center for them. And they host Michigan, obviously. They'll travel to Penn State and Oregon. 2 tough places to play all the time, and especially Oregon's going to be really loaded again, I think, in the upcoming season. Michigan now, look at their schedule. This schedule is a lot harder than Ohio State's. Michigan hosts Texas, a CFP team, hosts USC, hosts Oregon, travel to Washington, CFP team, and travel to Ohio State. Now, they've already lost their head coach. They're going to lose some more players. Maybe not quite as daunting as it would have looked a couple of weeks ago, but the Wolverines are losing some players. They're losing their second team All-American defensive line Chris Jenkins. Also, they lost their edge rusher Jalen Harrell. No word on J.J. McCarthy. I expect him to go pro. No word on Blake Corum or Donovan Edwards. Corum could come back for a 5th year. And no word on exactly what's going to happen with Jim Harbaugh, their head coach. Harbaugh is reportedly meeting with the Chargers soon. I think he'll let him go into the NFL. I think Harbaugh's done. Michigan has a mass exodus. They might not be in the top 4 in the Big Ten next season, depending on what happens. But nonetheless, as we sit here today, it's Ohio State, Michigan. That's a tough schedule for Michigan. Again, hosting Texas, USC, Oregon, traveling to Washington, Ohio State. Penn State plays at West Virginia, USC, and Wisconsin. They host UCLA, Ohio State, and Washington. I can easily see 2 losses in there for them. West Virginia is not a slouch. They're at Wisconsin. They're at USC. They get to host Ohio State, Washington, UCLA. I see 2 losses there potentially for them. USC. Listen, the USC plays in Las Vegas against LSU to open the season. They host Wisconsin, host Penn State, host Nebraska, host Notre Dame. So Wisconsin, Penn State, Nebraska, Notre Dame. They play at Michigan, at Washington, at UCLA. That's a tough road for USC. We're not sure their quarterback is yet for the 2024 season. Oregon, they host Ohio State, but they're at Oregon State, UCLA, Michigan, Wisconsin. Washington, then, they play Washington State at a neutral site. They host Michigan, host USC and UCLA. They're at Iowa, Penn State, and Oregon. Washington could be in for a tough road, too, depending on how everything shakes out with transfers, with having a new head coach. How's that going to work? But the Big Ten is going to be to go undefeated, to go with 1 loss in the conference is going to be a huge accomplishment going forward. Whereas every year it seems like we've had at least 1 undefeated team. I don't think we have an undefeated team in 2024 in the Big Ten. So, top 12 get to the playoffs. I expect you'll see 3 teams from the SEC and 3 teams from the Big Ten almost every year. just based on how solid these teams are. And you can be a 2-loss team, or in some cases, maybe even a 3-loss team, and still get into the 12-team playoff. So it's a brand new era in college football. It's now officially starting with 2024 and the additions of the Big Ten, of those 4 schools to the Pac-12, 18-team conference now. We'll see if they try to get to 20. Florida State's still trying to get out of the ACC, and I'm sure they'll still pursue Notre Dame. The Big Ten will, I'm sure, at some point. So, all right, that's it for the Buckeye Blitz. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll have lots more to talk about Ohio State football-wise and basketball-wise next time. I promise we'll get into that. Make sure you go to fantasysports.com. Download the app. It is free. Apple and Android. Talk to you soon.